I remember the exact moment I stopped believing in God. I was in a philosophy class my freshman year of college. 1 minute, the world made sense, and the next, crash. My evangelical Christian upbringing shattered into shards of glass. When I'd left my parents' cozy house for college, I was eager to reaffirm my religious faith, which was a strong source of order and meaning for my life. My belief in God gave me a sense of purpose, of right and wrong, of guidance about who I was and what I should do. My understanding of the world was like a well-built house. Solid foundation, clearly aligned walls, airtight windows, and a weatherproof roof that would protect me from the unknown. Most of us have been in a situation where everything we thought we knew seems to fall to pieces. Yours might have been a divorce, an election, a death, a trip, or simply a relationship with someone new and different. Anytime we lose faith in those old structures of truth, whether they be from our parents, our partners, our government, or our God, we can feel as though we are standing in the rubble of our worldview. Often it doesn't happen all at once. Cracks started to appear around the edges of my world a few months into college. I was taking an ethics class, and for the first time, I was challenged to think about where ideas about right and wrong come from. I started to have conversations with classmates who grew up with different backgrounds and beliefs about ethical issues, capital punishment, lying, sexuality. I started to wonder if I actually believed what I thought I believed. My well-built house started to feel a lot less stable. When we think deeply about the fundamental questions of the human experience, who am I? How do I know? What is real? What is good? What is the right thing to do? What is the meaning of life? And when we challenge ourselves to think about privilege, injustice, empire, money, and power, our seemingly unshakable structures of truth and value can start to fall apart. It can be devastating. And so many of us just avoid thinking too much. We shut down, seal up the windows, lock the doors, and scroll down a social media feed echo chamber while the world outside howls and sings. We avoid ideas that may challenge us and only engage with those that won't disrupt the safety of our structures. But eventually, if we spend too much time inside our safe little houses, the air becomes old and stale, and we can't breathe. In spite of how scary it was for me to question my beliefs, it also felt like I was breathing in fresh air for the first time. If we are to stay intellectually alive, we must let the outside world in. And sometimes that will mean losing our old structures. But whether we like it or not, loss is a necessary part of the process of true learning. Ken Bain, a researcher who has spent decades studying how people learn, has said that true learning, not simply rote memorization or acquiring concepts only to forget them a short time later, usually immediately after the test, but learning in which you see the world in different and lasting ways, requires that you face a situation in which your old mental model of the world needs to be demolished. That day in class, when my belief in God was shattered, my professor said something that it's too long to go into now, but on the face of it was really quite benign. But suddenly, my old beliefs, my truth, looked confusing and foreign. It didn't work anymore. I wandered out of the classroom in a daze and found myself at my professor's office door. For the next hour, I sat in her office and sobbed as she listened to me whimper and handed me tissues. "You've eaten from the tree of knowledge," she said. "Try as you might, once you take a bite, you can't spit out the apple." She promised I would get through it, though. "You'll go through a Dostoevsky phase," she joked. "You'll start wearing all black, smoking cigarettes, reading lots of Nietzsche. But you'll get through that, too." And I did. In fact, I was so transformed by this journey that I went on to get a PhD and become a professor of philosophy, because I had seen firsthand how powerful and transformative it was to learn to think for myself. I wanted to give that experience to others. Revising, refining, and even removing old beliefs altogether is a necessary part of critical thinking, deep learning, and intellectual growth. If you're feeling this way, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. So many of my students have been through this struggle. A few months into a term, a student will come to me and say, "If what I thought was true and good isn't, then nothing is real. Nothing is true. Nothing matters. What now?" The grief and devastation of intellectual loss can be overwhelming. We find ourselves unprotected, staring into a dark hole where our safe and orderly houses once were. And at this moment, there is a critical choice we all must make. Give up and fall into cynicism, or rebuild. Now, the first option is easy. Cynicism doesn't really ask anything of you. Don't believe in anything, the world is meaningless. Don't work toward anything, it doesn't matter anyway. Screw it, I'll be over here eating cheese doodles and watching Netflix. Cynicism allows us to regain a sense of control. We know the answers, and those answers let us off the hook. But in choosing cynicism, we also give up agency, our own ability to act, to create change. We deny ourselves the human experience of faith, of wonder, of believing in something and working toward a goal. Because ultimately, we crave meaning and purpose. And without them, we may feel comfortable, but we probably won't feel very fulfilled. Thinking deeply, challenging our beliefs, and even watching them crumble to pieces around us doesn't have to result in permanent meaninglessness and chaos. Even when we feel like we don't know where to begin, we can choose to create something new. This decision to rebuild is hope. Hope is the antidote to cynicism and despair. Hope recognizes that truth and value may not be as clear, as permanent, as reliable as you once thought, and yet chooses to believe, to create, to act anyway. So we find or make new building blocks for our mental models. We take pieces from the old structure and put them together in new ways. With no guarantees and no blueprint, we must synthesize, take a leap, experiment. We must build with the seriousness of a child at play. My daughter loves building with Legos, and she's 2, but she does it with the dedication and the focus of a structural engineer. And then, of course, as soon as she's done, what happens? Our beliefs and our values, our understanding of the world are critically important, the foundation for our actions and our lives. But we cannot take them too seriously. We must understand that even though this new structure serves us now, we may have to renovate or demolish it later. Your new creation will look different. It may not be as straight and sensible as before. Walls and rooms will twist and turn and end up looking like something you never could have anticipated. Something messy, and strange and beautiful and completely your own. In rebuilding, we take responsibility for our beliefs. We take ownership of them. Another question I often get from students is, what do you believe? Which really is just another way of asking, what's the answer? I respond that it's not my job to tell them what I believe. It's my job to help them figure out what they believe. Annoying, I know. But I also tell them that you won't necessarily find the answers. You just become more comfortable with not knowing them. You learn to revel in the pleasure of problem solving, the joy of discovery, and the wondrous mystery of uncertainty. My mental model now has an open roof. The work is never complete. And I imagine myself a student back in that classroom, but now I welcome new and different ideas. I breathe them in and turn them over in my mind without everything falling to pieces. Sometimes I decide they're not worth holding on to, and I let them blow out and away. And sometimes I decide I need to knock down a wall and renovate again. And now and then, I remind myself to take a break from building and simply gaze up with curiosity and wonder at the unknown. Thank you.